It's time for some questions. Anyone want to please come forward and introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Raymond de Califon. I'm a professor at the Mechanical Aerospace Engineering Department, and I also work on the data simulation for wildfire. So I have a quick question on the fire modeling itself. I noticed that in the previous presentations there were a lot of analysis on discrete burning of fuel and structures. And I noticed the model you presented is more like a smooth average effect. So my question is how useful is that for I guess for insurance purposes and assessment of the quality of a particular structure, and second, how do you make sure that the validation is not like something that's hidden and somebody else can actually verify its own model, because it looks like this is more closed off, right? It's not a proprietary model. Is that correct?
For
question for who's
So our fire spread modeling is proprietary. Technosil is developing this in-house. So I guess the use case for insurance is a little bit different than our customers. So our utility customers are just looking to kind of understand where the fire is spreading, not in terms of like a specific building per se for damage, but just the general area to make sure that this fire is moving in an area so that they have at least insight into the extremeness of that particular situation, because our customers are making operational decisions across a whole community and not necessarily looking at the value of a particular specific property. So we had to make trade-offs between spending the time to develop a model that necessarily parameterizes every single building, which would be computationally too expensive to run in an operational setting, versus taking a statistical approach that gives a good enough estimation of where that fire is going to spread, so that our utility customers in like an emergency operations center can have a close enough or approximately close enough view of what would potentially happen were a fire to break out.
Karen, did you have anything to
Is a
add?
question for me too?
And the reason why I'm asking that, because I can imagine within the community, I don't know, there might be a distribution system that distributes electricity, and if that gets damaged, the whole community loses electricity. You know what I mean? So it could be very important that particular structures are better modeled than just this average effect. And that anyway. So that's why I was wondering if that.
I'll just,
anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just comment too. I didn't obviously go into the details of the KCC wildfire model, but what you presented would be kind of one component of the KCC model, where the four components, there's the events, we simulate, whether it's a high wind event, medium, low, where it occurs based on vegetation, all of that. But then there's a intensity module. So based on, the vegetation, the topography, the wind speeds, we do have a dynamic physical fire spread model. I believe it operates at a 30-meter resolution. So again, I'm not the scientist, so I can't go into too much detail, but it does, dynamically spread, based again on topography and what have you. And then, there is a branding area on that says, okay, after you're out of the wildland vegetation, how much will it go, as the previous, I think, panel was talking, how far, that was extremely interesting, by the way, how far the embers will go. The model assumes some distance. We have to look at the new paper to see if we need to update that. And then the vulnerability module, and I will say too, we take into account roads, we take into account power lines, we take into account infrastructure as well, rivers, that was the interesting thing about the Tubbs fire, is that, tell me if I'm wrong, the firefighters didn't expect it to go over, I forget the highway, was it 101 to get into Santa Rosa? But it did, and there was like Fountain Grove was going and Santa Rosa was going, and so we do account for that. And again, we saw that even a highway that big is not going to prevent embers when the winds are blowing at, 60, 70 miles per hour. So there's a relationship between wind speed and how far embers go. And then on the individual properties, as was spoken earlier, there are about thousands of vulnerability functions for wildfire that take into account construction, square footage, just roof type, and then all the mitigation features. And hopefully we have a lot of that data for the individual properties. And then based on spacing, structure spacing, are you going to have building to building burn? Can you have radiant heat? What's going to, the combustible fences, et cetera. So, we don't have perfect information on everything. I'm sure you could come up with something that the model doesn't account for at this point, but it's a pretty detailed model, and it takes into account a lot of detail on the vegetation, the built environment, a lot of detailed information. And we're always working to improve it and validate it as well. One of the things that we do, I will say, we're the only modeling company that does this, is that we have our KCC live events. So as the LA fires were burning, we started on, so this went on for about 2 weeks, I think. We provide our clients with a footprint of the actual fire perimeter and the branding area that they get every day, and they can update their claims estimate. And it's really important because I'm sure as consumers you would agree, if your insurance company knows you have damage early and they reach out to you, it's obviously very helpful for you to know that your insurer knows what's happening. So we update that every day, and then at the end they have their claims estimate from our model, and then now or a year later they can see how well our model compared to the actual in terms of down to the policy level as to the damage. So we take, I don't even call it I call it model verification. We want to verify. I'm not a scientist, but I have a saying for my scientists: I want to trust but verify. So I want to verify that they, built a good model and that it actually works for our clients. So it's a very high resolution, dynamic fire spread model with lots of different data in there about the properties as well as the hazard.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, Tom Corringham, research economist at Scripps in the Atmospheric Science Department. Question for Karen. A lot has happened since you founded AIR and KCC. A lot of developments in computational power, resolution of models, changes in the insurance sector, interesting changes for different perils. I'm wondering what you're most excited about for the coming years in terms of cat modeling, and also what challenges you see.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's a great question. Well, I'm always excited about cat modeling, which is why I got back into it. I think just a little bit of why I started KCC, what I got excited about is that traditionally the models were for hurricanes and earthquakes. It was that tail of the distribution, the 1 in 100, the 1 in 250. Nobody really worried about wildfires or severe convective storms or winter storms. And so, I think we started modeling a KCC probably 15 years ago or something, 12, 15 years ago. Then these, not wildfire so much yet, but severe convective storm, winter started taking center stage. And the other models weren't very good because they take a statistical approach. And you can do that for hurricanes and earthquakes, but not for wildfire or severe convective storm. So what I was most excited about in KCC was building physical models, as we talked about, that can actually simulate the physics of these. So for severe convective storm, our team, it just blows my mind. Our SCS model ingests 30 gigabytes of data a day. By 9 a.m. every morning, our clients have a hail and a tornado wind footprint, and it's completely automatic. It's completely automatic. So what am I excited about now? Certain things still cannot be, like derechos. I don't know if people heard derechos, tornadoes. They can't really be predicted in advance. but we're applying since we collect 30 gigabytes of data a day, we have terabytes of data archived. So I'm really excited about using machine learning, AI, to just be able to forecast things better. We're already using it for wildfire. Our everybody I think knows this, but I have to educate insurers a lot. Large loss fires are wind events. Okay, these are meteorological events. Vegetation is important, but it's really the winds, because when winds are blowing at 70, 80 miles an hour, suppression really becomes impossible. And that's very interesting there. So the winds are very important. And the models generate losses at the location level. So we've used machine learning for looking at wind patterns, like what are the dominant wind patterns during the dry season, because that's going to dictate the direction of the fire, where it's likely to spread and what have you. So in our stochastic model, we have built in these kind of patterns. But I just think for the atmospheric perils, there's a lot of potential for AI and machine learning, and I'm really excited about that. And that's where a lot, by the way, we have a great team, but we need to collaborate, because that again, the computing needs and the research needs are very steep. But that's what I'm excited about.
Thanks, Karen. I have a question. When it comes to fire modeling in general, in the wildfire domain, it's not uncommon to mix apples and oranges. Actionability of wildfire models and wildfire data is different for different industries it relates to as well. So I think it would help our audience here to understand, what does modeling mean for risk, hazard, spread, and what are the actionability of those for insurance industry? And I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, one size does not fit all. Mm-hmm. And how do we actually create an environment that we name things for what they are?
Yeah, can you give an example? I'm not quite sure.
Like spread modeling and risk modeling are different things. And
spread modeling.
Yeah. And once an ignition happens, there is the risk of spread. But before, what does risk mean? Mm-hmm. These are actually or once an ignition happens, was this risk models that are statistical versus physics-based models that truly talk about fire behavior and spread. And these are very poorly understood. Mm-hmm. And application of them for stakeholders who are using them are also really poorly understood. Same comes for data. Right, in silos, coming from different perspectives. All of them are useful, but there is no one size fits all in all of these. Also resolutions of data, and the time spans that they come in. So it would be really great for our audience, I think, to get your opinions on where we should move the needle to be better informed.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we do see things merging. So, for example, I mentioned stochastic. So the real value of a catastrophe model is before these events happen, we have to simulate hundreds of thousands. It used to be only 1,000 30 years ago. Now it's millions when we have more computing power, and give insurers a future view of what their losses could be. But, that could be more portfolio-based. It doesn't need to be as high resolution as what you might want for underwriting or, some of these other, we talked about risk scores. But I will say now that as the models themselves have become much higher resolution, and we do model down to the location level, and we do model all these risk characteristics, there is kind of a merging of, and we have a fire spread model. So it used to be that was separate, but we're trying to incorporate all of that into this big, portfolio model that can do everything from a portfolio down to an individual location. And on that theme, though, I don't know if I answered your question well, but one thing that was brought up was data going in, like on defensible space, and do insurance companies have that data on is it a Class A roof or not? And I think this is another thing to be excited about for the future, that these risk scoring firms, we were talking about a modeling versus the risk scores, really what many of them do is they have, the aerial imagery, and then they use AI to come up with roof condition and roof type and all of that. And that's very exciting, and I didn't have a chance to tell before, but that is perfect information to feed into the model. They use it to just come up with a score, if it's good or bad, and that's fine, but I think it's even more valuable that we can pull it into the models and change the loss estimates for, or improve the loss estimates for individual properties as well as a portfolio as a whole. So that's what we're working on now. So it's almost like a merging of all of these so that you can, really have a robust solution that really gives you your robust portfolio, your robust future view, and live when actually something's happening, you're also getting a view of what's happening there. So they are different applications, but we're trying to build them all into at least an integrated application.
From the, I guess from Technosolve's perspective, and from just a general modeling perspective, I would caution that just a higher resolution of a model doesn't necessarily reflect better performance. It's the contextualization of whatever the model is spitting out is really important. So at Technosolve, what we've done is we've generated 20 years of historical climatology, so that our weather forecasts, which again with these really catastrophic wildfires are basically weather-driven events, we're able to contextualize what this forecast means in terms of how extreme it is. So we're able to tell at a location, this location in the last 20 years has experienced a wind speed in excess of 55 miles an hour 4 times. And so knowing that will help drive the extremeness of how we display and articulate that forecast to our customers so that they know, is this a regular everyday red flag warning, or is this a red flag warning that is unlike any other red flag warning that has been issued, say, in the last 10 or 15 years for this particular area. So delineating that extremeness and then basing that climatology on the same, physics and parameterizations of the model that we're providing operationally day to day. Be like if I gave you a ruler to go measure your house in your neighborhood, because I was worried that your house was the tallest house in the whole neighborhood, and then you did that, and then you're comparing the height that you just measured against every other house, but then it discovered that everybody else used a yardstick to measure their house, so that you're comparing, your instrument that you measured was this long and everybody else was, this big. And so it is a bit of an apples to oranges comparison. So ensuring that, that historical data that we're using to contextualize our forecasts, and then that helps validate the fire spread modeling that we're developing is so important, and I think a pretty significant differentiator between what Technosolve is doing and kind of how we view and value development of fire spread and kind of extreme meteorological conditions.
Cool.
Judd?
Very cool. So I think this question occurs to me just because of the two of you are together on this panel and the different customers that you serve. But I want to introduce another boring insurance term, which is subrogation. If you don't know what subrogation means, subrogation is when you suffer a loss that is the legal liability of some third party. Your insurer pays your claim, and then your insurer sues the person that caused you the loss and gets paid back. So in California, a really important share of the total losses that we've suffered in, the major wildfires over the past 10 years have been the fault of electric utilities. Just utilities have ended up paying a big share of those claims. Insurers have recovered some of the claims they've paid out through a lengthy, painful process of subrogation. And I'm wondering how you think about that when you're building a wildfire cat model for insurance rate making. In principle, if we know that utility ignitions are ultimately going to be paid by utilities, you might think that you want to not account for utility-caused ignitions at all in premiums. That's one extreme. Another extreme is if we think the process of subrogation is really inefficient and expensive, that even maybe insurers are going to recover some of those claims, but they're also going to spend a lot of money on lawyers, and so we still need to build that in. I'm just curious how you think about it, how you account for it, and what your thoughts are.
Right. So I should probably,
Yeah,
since
I
work
remember.
with
I
insurance.
can't remember the difference between premium and deductible. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're paying it all.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a difficult question, subrogation. It's been around, it's for every peril, but obviously it's the most extreme for wildfire when you have these utilities being held accountable. And I would say that the models don't really model that explicitly at this point. It's like something separate, because again, the models are modeling the physical damage to the structures and the cost to replace them. Okay, that's what the models provide. And this, subrogation is something that comes later, and it's probably not even in the claims data, unless to say this is going to be subrogated. So the data that we work with doesn't really capture that. And I do think it's something we need to look at for the future because it could be significant. And so, do you know how much is going to be? I'm curious since do you know how much will be subrogated?
Kara's here too. And we're going to find out.
How much will it be for the LA wildfires?
Yeah.
Do you think?
I was waiting for someone to follow. For the LA wildfire, I can't speak to it, but over the long term, it has been a really significant share of the rate is kind of because of the insurance companies.
It has or hasn't? It has or hasn't?
Yeah.
It is significant.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I
think
suspect that they would account for that separately at this point, not directly from the model.
So if we go into the rate filings, we should see the CAT model, the modeled loss from the CAT model, and then they should be lowering the rate to account for the expected
Yeah,
recovery
I'm not
from
sure if
subrogation.
they do that.
It is a really challenging issue, so I'm not sure how much I can speak to it now, but in the historical way of doing it, when that CAT adjustment was based on a historical average of losses, there was an adjustment that was applied to basically see like how much of in the past has a company paid out for subrogation, and that was one of the things that's taken into account. But that's really challenging because then you have to assume that what the company has paid out in the past is the same as what they're going to pay out in the future, which is especially inaccurate if you're both because like the legal environment changes, but then also these utilities are then supposed to be using the money to part of these settlements is that they have to do all this mitigation that's supposed to reduce the risk in the future. So assuming that the historical subrogation payments are the same as the future isn't, doesn't put you in a really good place. And it's something, we have part of the reason we have the standards in our regulations about best available science for mitigation, and it specifically calls out utilities, is so that as the data develops and as we understand more about the role of utilities in ignitions and how much they're doing to reduce those ignitions and how that affects the risk, the models should be able to take into account how that risk is reduced and how, therefore, like by de facto, the likelihood of subrogation is reduced. But in the short term, while we're using CAT adjustments, we're still navigating it. We do collect information at the rate filing step about how much insurance companies historically, they're still reporting what they've paid in subrogation before, but it's kind of factoring into that rate process differently than it used to because the system has changed to allow models.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. And I want to thank our speakers for their great contributions. I think we learned that in the discussion also. We have really difficult problems to solve. We need to better integrate science, and open models for alert wildfire is needed to transparently validate and use these models, and also learn how we apply all of them in the right context. And thanks for, again, speaking, and I think Ramesh is coming next.
Thank you.